We do have one presentation by Rod in a few moments' time, followed by hopefully a dialogue session with our government agencies. We'll then take refreshments and return for the final part of the afternoon with our closing ceremony. So, with that, ladies and gentlemen, it's my pleasure to now welcome Roderick Ferguson McGrath. Rod is a principal of Lace Sport Management Consultant Australia, and he has a presentation today on the critical success factors identified by research on the effectiveness of a national sporting organization. Rod, thanks for joining us.
Selamat pagi. Selamat petang. Apa khabar? Saya Rod dari Australia, Perth. I've actually been here quite a few times to Brunei. First came here back in 1998 and 1999 before the SEA Games. Met PM then, PM, Sir from Deputy Secretary from AFC, executive committee members, and, participants here. Sorry, I should have said that before I got started. But in 1999, I met David Booth, who was involved with the Brunei Football Association at the time. I was a high performance manager with the Ministry for Culture, Youth and Sport. I saw how the ministry worked on the inside, saw how the department worked, and then also worked with coaches as well too at the time. But what I must say is that FABD has come a long way since '99. PM has been heavily involved in different ways with regards to secretary and also president. But this sort of forum would not happen these days as much within Australia. We wouldn't be so open, so transparent, publicly inviting the public, people to come listen. We'd probably be closed doors. If something went wrong, we'd probably do a investigation, do a report. The report might come out publicly, but wouldn't be so public with regards to a forum, inviting the media too. So my congratulations, PM, and to the executive members of FABD. You guys have done very well in relation to this forum. I know it's also been mentioned that what goes on further, this is just one part of a step going forward. So well done, Brunei, FABD. So my topic today, as mentioned, is critical success factors identified by research on the effectiveness of a national sporting organisation. This actually came out of a study. But before we do that, purpose of what we're all about. So this is from a book called Legacy from the New Zealand All Blacks. Now, New Zealand's a country about 4 million people, similar size to Singapore in population, but does outstandingly well in rugby union. And a nice quote that I saw was, person with a narrow vision sees a narrow vision. Person with a wide vision sees a wide vision. And what I have to congratulate everyone here and FABD and AFC and our coaching staff as well too is that you're prepared to see a wide vision. You're prepared to develop. I'll talk a bit more about the legacy at the end, but the All Blacks have had consistent success. They still have to compete against two other football codes, in particular rugby league or soccer as they call it down south, or football. But rugby union has done over the decades to New Zealand. And yet it's only a country of 4 million people. So Australia, 25 million people. They sort of kick us a few times, and they do it to the rest of the world as well too. So it goes to show you that a small country can focus. A small populated country can focus and do very well. It just depends on how it goes about it. We'll talk further about that as well. Okay, Australia. We are where, in some way, you guys are thinking back in 1976, Montreal Olympic Games, we didn't win a gold medal. In Australia, that's, the public sees us then as a bit of a basket case. in the elite sport area. 5 years later, Australian national sports system was overhauled. So some of the outcomes included funding being increased by leading community sport, sports facilities being developed, the Australian Institute of Sport being developed. Opened in January 26, 1981. Sport planning promoted widely at the national level, and then over time at the state level, and over time at the community level. And then sport courses at university commenced. I know Chair was talking about sports psychology. Someone else mentioned sports management. So in 1981, when the Institute of Sport opened, not far from the Institute was the Australian university called University of Canberra, or at that time it was called Canberra College of Advanced Education. It started courses, a Bachelor of Applied Science in sport coaching, Bachelor of Arts in looking at management, and a Bachelor of Arts at media. So they were looking at developing journalists with a sports background, sports managers and coaches, sports scientists. So that started back in 1981. I went recently to UBD, to the Open Day. And we talked about education as being one thing that's been mentioned as part of the grassroots and part of development, whether there's a sports studies course here. Brunei used to have something some time ago with a PE program, but there's now no sports studies course. There's an opportunity there to develop a sports industry with football leading the way, with people coming out of that university or another college. I think Luxembourg College is looking at a diploma of sport business course with a sort of sport background. But your education area needs to develop here in Brunei. And so coming out of our Institute of Sport, coming out of our that course back in 1981, and I know because I did subjects in sports psychology, sport law, sports management. A lot of people went on to work in the industry, work in the ministry, work at the Australian Institute of Sport, went on to do further research, and then worked with sporting bodies like FABD, for instance, in a wide variety of areas. So there's a great opportunity here to talk to the MOE about, and also UBD, about developing those sport courses. Similar with regards to high school. Some of the things that we've done in high school with regards to elite athletes is the last 2 years very important, but maybe they could do it over 3 years. So they have a bit of longer time, have more time out, and also we provide support to them as well too. So there's opportunity. So our goal at the Olympics in 2020, in 2000, year 2000, was to get 60 medals, 20 gold, 20 silver, 20 bronze. So we ended up getting 58 medals in total. So 60 was the total. We ended up getting 58 medals. And I think we achieved our gold medal target. So 76 to 2000, only 24 years, but we worked towards it. Now we're having the Olympics in 2032. Already we have a national sports plan that any one of you here can go on and find on the website that outlines how Australia will work towards what it's going to do for 2032. But also a big part of it is not just the games, not just preparing athletes, not just community sport involvement, not just developing facilities, but legacy. What comes out of those games? What are the legacy? Now, for Australia to do well at those games, and we aim to be in the top 5 at most Olympics, and in 2000 we were in 4th place. What we aim to do post 2032 is look at the legacy. So they've got a legacy committee in place already. They're looking already at legacy, and that's 9 years out now. So 9 years out, we're looking at what are we going to achieve. Of course, we've got the Commonwealth Games in 2026, and so that could be a stepping stone. We've got the World Cup Rugby in 2027. This year, as mentioned, FIFA World Cup for women is happening within Australia. And I'll mention something about women later in relation to critical success factors and some studies that has been done on with regards to women's football and what success meant in relation to that study as well. Okay, so out of a 2015 study, which was called Sports Policy Factors Leading to International Sporting Success, broken down in just called the SPLISS study. There were 9 essential pillars that they looked at. And interesting, when you start looking through some of these pillars, it's very much what the AFC, to the club licensing program, very much what FABD is looking at in relation to its body. Now we call an MA a National Sporting Organisation, NSO, so National Sporting Organisation Australia, and our state bodies also have state sporting organisations. And then we go down to community level as well too. So recently last 10 years, been working at the community sport and recreation level for local government, liaising with a lot of sporting bodies, liaising with state government, getting facilities built, doing community development in relation to sport development for our sporting bodies. So this study found 138 critical success factors that led to a nation's sporting success. So that's what a nation might do. And the study involved 15 distinct nations, of which from Oceania, Australia was one, Asia, Japan and South Korea were involved, over 3,000 athletes, 1,300 high performance coaches and 240 performance directors. So what you're reading in front of you is the 9 pillars, 138 critical success factors. Now, what does that mean for a national sporting organisation or a MA, as the AFC calls, in member bodies? So James Ferguson, no relative to me, he was our executive director of the Australian Sports Commission. 1990 to 2000 was a very successful period for us, leading up to the Olympic Games. He's looked at these factors from a nation study and has looked at what it means from a national sporting organisation. So what you're looking at is a paper that he put together with a slight variation, looking at national sporting organisations and what it needs to be, what it needs from a critical success factor for those bodies. Now, judgments about the effectiveness, though, of national sporting organisation can also be determined by how much money you get, whether you get a lot of money or you don't get a lot of money. But effectiveness, therefore, important not only from national sporting bodies to deliver services to their members or achieve success on the stage, but also in terms of level of funding that they might receive. So in Australia, our national sporting bodies, particularly those involved with the Olympic pathways, normally take out a 4-year plan in relation to what they're going to do over the next 4 years leading up to the next Olympics. And they come to an agreement with the Australian Sports Commission, a little bit similar to your ministry here, a little bit similar, as to what monies that they need from a high performance point of view. They have target, that they have critical success factors that they need to achieve. And over time, the Australian Sports Commission works with the body. So if you take the case of the FABD, someone in the ministry would be your liaison person. So someone in the ministry you would be liaising with in relation to your funding, as to whether you're achieving your targets going up to the next Olympics. If you don't achieve those targets, then you may have a negotiation issue in relation to the next 4-year round. But it's very much, and coming back to also what you mentioned within your presentation today, is that governments working closely together with sport. Sport achieves what it can, governments achieve what they can. Governments want to do well on the national stage, but they need sporting bodies to do it. But they also want to make sure that sporting bodies are well organised, well managed, and achieve what they say that they're going to achieve. So Australia is putting a lot of money into the 2026 Commonwealth Games coming up in Victoria. It will be a little bit different this time around. It won't be in Melbourne. It'll be in about 4 regional towns within Victoria. So that also helps to develop sporting facilities as well within the regional areas. And then also then leading up to the Olympics 2032, which is at the end of 2032, which will be at the bottom part of Queensland, Gold Coast, Brisbane, Sunshine Coast area, in that area. Really nice area to go if you're looking into travel. AirAsia has a direct flight straight into Gold Coast. So it's a great opportunity to come and watch. In 2018, the Gold Coast had the Commonwealth Games, and Brunei had a delegation there coming to those games as well. Okay, so according to Ferguson, what is an effective sporting organisation? So he says it offers broad opportunities for fulfilling sports participation for all sectors of the community. And Ferguson, just to say again, he was the executive director of the Australian Sports Commission, a little bit like maybe the permanent head of the ministry here, but he was also a member of some national sporting bodies as well. So he had a knowledge of what was happening within sport from a executive member of committees as well as being a member of government. It has a base of community participation, community participants, which is growing, not declining, supported by an enthusiastic group of trained volunteers, have a system which will allow participants with talent to be identified and to progress through to national selection, and where the national team is improving, or at least maintaining its standing in national competition relevant to the sport. These also would be some of the critical factors of a 4-year plan that government would be that the sport will be organising with government for its funding, and on a regular basis, government would be checking in with sport to see how sport's going. So that connection with government is very important. Next one. Yeah. So the question asked, what are the factors that are essential for the effectiveness of those national and state sporting organisations through which sport is developed and promoted domestically and athletes are groomed for international competition? Yeah. But even with research, there are some things that we need to be made aware of. Sporting organisations vary in size, they vary in funding, and they vary in popularity. Okay, so modifying this model that research was done at looking at nations, bring it down to national sporting organisations, there are still some significant differences between the environments in which sporting organisations operate. Some are rich, some poor, some have large bases, some small, some associated with communities with high levels of education. That might be in Australia, for instance, to be involved in rowing, sailing. Normally people who have access to high levels of education and wealth. Others might be based in trade-based communities, so they don't need to have a lot of money to be able to spend. You could say with regards to football, for kids, there's not a lot of money that they need to actually spend to play the game at a very basic level, at least to start the sport, unlike rowing or sailing, for instance. Some are associated with migrant or Indigenous communities, and some are more attractive to TV. But a sporting organisation should be doing whatever it can to promote their sport widely and to achieve success at the highest levels. So, 9 central pillars, which you have in front of you, the paper, just from sort of observation, notwithstanding sort of the first 1 p.m. in relation to FABD, but if I was to look at the second one, with regards to governance, management, and culture, I would say from what I've seen, from what I've heard, I would say that FABD is really, as this 2.1 says, is really committed to a culture of excellence. It's trying to do whatever it can going forward. And if you go through 2.2, 2.3, etc., you could say that FABD are doing a lot of these things now, from what I see from the outside. Yeah? Of course, when you're on the inside, yeah, we can do this a bit better, we can do something a little bit more. But, I would say FABD with Pillar 2, and then when you start looking at Pillar 3, and we've had the presentation today from Mario and Paul, there's some really good things happening here with FABD, but it takes time. It takes time. And when I was talking to PM maybe a few months ago, we're talking about the results that I just saw, with regards to how Brunei did. I didn't really understand, of course, being on the outside, not knowing. And Mario certainly enlightened me today about some of the issues in relation to, what the team found and going into those AFC games. So there's a whole lot of understanding, but it's also about educating your public, getting the message out, saying what you're doing. But you'll take through Pillar 3, program operations, you are doing very, very well in relation to moving forward. With regards to Pillar 4, again, talent identification. You go through what those critical success factors are, listening to what Paul was saying today, and there was a comment about, are we missing something, or is another way of doing something? Yeah, sure, there can be. But as an organisation, I feel FABD should be very proud of themselves, and yourselves basically, because you're all part of FABD, and the executive are only as strong as the clubs, with them. So this value, we talk about unity, very, very important, but you're on the right track. So if you take these as the critical success factors of a national sporting organisation, an MA, as the AFC says, then you start going through it, say in the coaching area, training facilities, okay, that's an area that needs to pick up. We've talked about that today. Definitely that's an area to pick up, because because you do need facilities. Every club needs to have access to their own facility, which is very important. And then then that will help you develop your pathways as well. Probably an area that has been talked about today is athlete welfare and support. And there's been some thought processes as to how that might be improved, or, with regards to what you might do. Career education is something that we do in Australia. So we've developed a group of people with the skill base to work with athletes, to talk to them about their career, their education, what they want to do after they finish their careers, what type of work. So we really wanted to prepare them post their careers. So career education in Australia is quite big at both the national level and at the state level. So all of our states institute support, our National Institute of Sport have athlete career advisors. So we're working closely with the athletes. Something that was mentioned, when you send players away, and we found this before with our Indigenous athletes, so our Aboriginal athletes who are very good, coming out of a rural country area, when we sent them straight to the city, they've floundered. They actually don't know what to do. They want to go home. And yeah, that's quite natural. So one of the success factors that one of the clubs has done, because they have a region, that's their region, and they've taken these athletes in, is that it's a step process. They've gone from their homes to a smaller town first where they played football, so Australian football. And then they've gone from that smaller town to Perth. When they got to Perth, they actually stay in a house situation that is managed by the club. So the club has supervisors, the club is looking after those athletes. And for the Australian Football League, it's actually very important that these athletes have a good pathway coming, because at the end of the day, they could be, within a couple of years' time, earning $500,000 plus, $1 million plus in relation to contracts. So the clubs, want to make sure that their pathways are good. The state club that's been looking after them and responsible for them also gets some money back when they then that player gets drafted to a national Australian rules football team. So, but the point that I'm trying to make is they are looked after. These players don't just come sent away. Where they go to, they are looked after and mentored. But it's been a learning experience because in the early stages, players were just sent away. They were left to their own devices, got homesick, didn't know what to do, weren't used to living in a bigger city, which is natural. So one of the things that you might do is, as you bring players in from outsiders, you're looking after their welfare, for instance. Something else that you mentioned, you talked about safeguarding, so child safeguarding. So in Australia, now working with children, if you are working with children in an employment situation or a coaching situation, but you're not a parent, you have to have a working with children check card. And that goes against, that looks at the National Police database across the country that's managed by the state government. So every state government has their own system, but managed by the state government. But it is illegal to work in an area or to be a volunteer in an area where you are involved with children. Now, the other area that's actually moving ahead, and so you would get a 3-year card. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that the children are protected. The person just has a card. So they still have to have an education process that your organisation needs to undertake. So you need to have an education process where everyone who is working with children, and it doesn't necessarily mean the executive if they're not directly working with children, so they're not involved. But if it's coaches, technical directors, volunteers, if they're working directly with children. Besides the working with children, so the card really should undergo some sort of education program so they quite understand what it's all about. So the National Safeguarding Children has come out of other issues that have arisen through the church, the Catholic Church, and a few other institutions where children's rights have been abused. And so it's a whole process within Australia now in relation to making sure that we look after our youth and our children, and that we're careful. And it's not only just, it involves a whole range of abuse areas, from physical abuse, to emotional abuse, to mental abuse, to sexual abuse, etc. So there's a whole lot of areas to be aware of. But Australia's gone very strong within this area. So that's part of the program. So do you think, is there any area here you think you're not doing well? Clubs, the clubs that make up FABD, you are like our state sporting bodies in some ways. You're from Tootong, JB, wherever, or KB, or you're like in some ways, not like our state sporting bodies. You too should be involved in this sort of area. And I know as part of the licensing club arrangements that the AFC is bringing down, a lot of these are what's involved. So how's everyone doing? On target? I think there's 3 clubs that are in there so far. Is that right, Ian? There are 3 clubs with the club licensing that have achieved the club licensing. 4 now. Okay, yeah. How many do you need to get there? Sorry? Okay, yeah. Okay, so these are the areas that have been identified for you, whether it's a national sporting body, state sporting body, a club, as to whether you're successful or not successful. And the list that you have is almost like a competency base in relation to ticking off. Are you working towards those, or have you achieved? Now, there may be a 10th pillar, Ferguson feels, but it probably could be included in another way. That is the national environment or culture within a national sports system. So the political, social, economic environment of a country does play a significant role in determining the way sport is delivered in a particular country. So every country has its own political, social, and economic environment. So what happens within Australia isn't necessarily, what will happen here, and vice versa. So that also has to be taken into account. But But moving forward, it really has to do with your culture and your basic culture of the organisation. I'm not talking about the culture of the country. A sport with a strong culture, and I can see this with FABD, will be more effective than one that does not have such a culture. So the values, attitudes, and goals shared by all the members, and this has been talked about today. The sport has a strong culture of excellence. So coming back to one of the critical success factors, talked about a strong culture of excellence within the governance management area. Shown by the management, heavily influenced by the leadership of the board. PM, secretary, executive members are all wanting the FABD to be a high-performing organisation. Competency and manner of those delivering services to athletes, such as coaches and sports science, is also very important. They also have to be high-performing. And I can see that Brunei has this in place. So there's lots of opportunities to move forward. And once again, I'll say with regards to representative from AFC here, that connection is very important because you're actually providing an impetus for people to perform highly too. So a sport that takes itself seriously, and I know FABD does, #1 sport in Brunei, no doubt, works together, is decisive, professional in its attitude, and promotes a culture of excellence. You have to be promoting a culture of excellence if you want to be outstanding in sport at whatever level. So this critical success factor, this sort of idea of culture might really come under the governance and management area. So Ferguson, when he was looking at thought, and from his experience working in sport, he felt culture is a really important issue. Okay, I just had a look at went on the website, looking at club licensing, came up with Singapore, one of your neighbours. So according to Football Association of Singapore, by implementing the club licensing system, which AFC, I'm sure, is happy to see being done, football clubs are benefited by, once again, developing strong governance organisation structures. This is what the club licensing system is all about. Implementing stable financial management and reporting, improving technical standards of coaches and clubs, increasing reliability, credibility, integrity of clubs and the league, promoting and continuously improving the standard of football, engaging qualified coaches, and that's been talked about today in relation to qualified coaches throughout the whole system, encouraging youth development, also being talked about today, improving infrastructure facilities, most needed here in Brunei, and that's a longer term process, but most needed. And I've been coming to Brunei, over 20 plus years. And in fact, in 2006, I brought a basketball team here who played in the Brunei Cup in the indoor stadium. Almost beat the Filipinos in the final, but not quite. Improving the club's administration, management, and organisation, which is what FABD is definitely looking to do. And then raising the economic and financial standing of the clubs, that's been mentioned here today as well, through effective marketing and commercial exploitation. And maybe that might be where FABD, and in some ways, might work with the clubs. In Australia, we sometimes have our states body or national bodies working with the bodies below us. Or what we might do in Australia, on the community level, is we would have we may have some money that we get from the state government, separately that we apply for, and we have a marketing consultant come and talk to community members about sponsorship. How do you go about sponsorship? How do you go about grants, writing grant applications? So how do you look after sponsors? How do you approach the media? So we actually do that right down at the community level. State levels can be involved, but they should know by now. National level should definitely know. And, we've also got the system where we're bringing people through the university system in a number of courses who are already trained in sports studies. So Yeah, when I was at one of the universities in teaching the sports management area, we actually brought in outside people in from sport to talk to our students about how best that they could, do certain things, whether it's contact the media, whether it's write reports, whether it's do marketing plans, etc. So you're bringing in practitioners, and that's very important with regards to universities, making sure that you are, very pragmatic orientated, as well as the sporting group, also making sure that its members get as much training as they can at the lower level. So, and keeping the volunteers involved is very important. Okay, I just finish off here. Yeah, so the research has come from these three areas that I spoke about today. Ferguson has taken a practitioner's approach. 2 and 3 were involved in looking at nation and their policies and systems of doing things. So, question I have for you: what is your legacy? So, in sport, this quote, which has come from a book called Legacy about the All Blacks, and when someone makes the national team in the All Blacks, they are given a book, and the book goes right back to when the All Blacks first started, and page by page is a picture of the uniform and a story, right up to the present day. So this book is given to every new All Black, and then there's some blank pages at the end of that book. These blank pages are for them, the latest person to play in the national team. So they are looking at the history of the national team, the legacy of where the national team has been, and they're being asked the question, what is going to be your legacy to play in that team? This can also apply to executive members. What is your legacy involved with regards to FABD? Clubs, what is your members? What is your legacy? What are you doing to make sure that at the same time as spiral going forward, it's also returning, okay? So this is your time now. All of us in life, there is an end point, but when we're involved in sport, we are very lucky to be involved in sport in different ways, whether working or volunteers, but we must have a legacy. We must finish with an outcome that is better for everyone based on our time involved with the sport. Okay.
Rod, thank you so much. So, Rod, if you can take a seat, and we'll open up for Q&A, and Haji Zainal's heading down now to moderate this session. And to our audience, once again, just raise your hand if you have a question. We'll come to you with the microphone.
Yeah, welcome back to the question and answer session. Again, I will not try to summarize what has been said by our speaker, except that there are 9 pillars. And if there are any questions, particularly on the topic that has just been presented.
Thank you.
You might feel lonely here.
What's that?
I say you might feel lonely if I don't.
I know exactly. I might say something while I'm waiting for all your questions. It was mentioned a couple of times today about national players, or bringing players into your national team. A couple of things. I know with Cambodia in 2015, a lot of their basketball players came from an area of Pennsylvania. So they went to Pennsylvania, where there's a lot of Cambodians living, playing basketball, and they obviously had Cambodian citizenship, and then brought them back to play in the SEA Games in Singapore in 2015. So that was one way that they had a basketball team, but players playing, in the US in some ways, and brought back. So they went looking. I know that with Malaysia, with regards to cycling, they've looked at where they have people overseas, and they had someone in Melbourne who was involved in cycling that they kept there and then brought them back as well too. So that's another. In a sport, rugby union, I think rugby union had something that PM was mentioning in relation to 5 years, but I think at one stage it might have had 3 years not playing for their national team, or maybe never having played for the national team, but being able to come in and play for Australia or play for another country without being naturalised. So you could play at that level, at the international level. So there might be different ways, depending on the rules. FIFA might have, of course, a different sort of rule, but there may be players outside, Brunei players, that are playing that you may not be aware of yet. It's the same as with the high school system in Australia, in America, through Australia. Australians have gone over to play high school basketball or high school tennis with the thought of trying to get a scholarship to go into a university in America and get an education at the same time. So they're getting in. So there's players that have been brought back from America to play in our national teams because we've recognised that they're over there. So we have several hundred players playing college basketball in the US, as well as players playing high school. So there are other ways that you can beef up your national team over time.
Hello. We met
Yes, coach.
already. As you mentioned, sorry, my name is Pengen Sapudin, President for the Coaches for Brunei. So my question, I can say question or just, as you mentioned with this research, this is for Australia. It's been successful in what do you call helping sports in Australia, right? So for Brunei context, especially FABD, what do you suggest in this 9 pillar? There are 9 pillars. Which pillar suit FABD most?
Okay, sure. I'll just come back in relation to the study. So the study was looking at, based on 15 nations originally, back in 2015, 2010, then 2015. So study looking at nation sporting success, critical success factors. Then a practitioner, so this was James Ferguson, who has actually done some work in Sarawak as well with Sarawak Sports. There, he actually modified it slightly, the critical success factors, to refer to a national sporting organisation. So as you read through that, you would read it as a national sporting organisation, not as a nation, and Brunei or FABD is a national sporting organisation, or an MA as we say. So it actually very much applies to any country, although there are some issues, as mentioned, in relation to political, social, economic environment. There are differences, but that's about really looking at a national sporting organisation. With regards to what might be the best pillar for Brunei, it doesn't actually say in the research that any one pillar is better than anyone else, but you could have a sport where you have a very good individual. The sport really is not managed very well, but that individual sort of goes through the system. But that sport can't sustain itself over time. That individual might have success. I think with Brunei, with FABD, the governance, management, culture of excellence is where you start, and that's where FABD has started. And I think that's where you're on the right track. Having this sort of forum, which is very transparent, very accountable, laying down exactly what you're doing in the coaching area, in the talent identification area, is excellent. Having input from the AFC, so that governance management is very important. And it's not only important at the FABD side, it's also important at the club side, because FABD success depends on the clubs being strong. The FABD is only as strong as the weakest club in the FABD system. So the weakest club will bring everyone down. So that's why it's in the interest of FABD to help clubs, and the AFC helps FABD, but FABD to help clubs. And that's why when I talk at the end about your legacy, people's legacy is what are we here for? It's been mentioned that really we're here for the players. That's our number one reason for being. But to do the best by the players, we have to do all the other things well. And having a culture of excellence is definitely the way to go. One of the other things Australia did in the early stages was set up coaching committees, national coaching committees generally, developed coaching courses. So I had a general principles course and a sports-specific course. But everyone who did a level 1 or 2, say, course for one sport had to do this general principles that was set up. Now, over time, the sport itself developed its own general principles, but that was one of the starts. It's also been mentioned about strength and conditioning today. In Australia, we have a strength and conditioning association. So a lot of the fitness people that you would want to have part of your teams would be members of the strength and conditioning association. They would have done either level 1 or level 2 with them, or they would have done a university course and then been accepted into that association. So you'd be looking, so if you want to be a fitness coach, say for your national teams, different national teams, then you have to be a member of this association, because this association has a standard that you want. And Brunei can develop that strength and conditioning association over time. But I really believe that in the education area, and you really do need to maybe consider talking to UBD about, and I went out to UBD and talked to people and gave my card and said, let's keep in touch. No one's come back to me. So, but it's a patient process, patience, it's taking small steps along the way.
Next question, please. Or remarks?
Rod, the part which sort of attracted me in your presentation is the cultural part. I can sort of appreciate the passion of the Kiwis and the Aussies about sports and the spirit of competitiveness. The All Blacks will not want to lose to the Wallabies. I mean that that is disaster to them, But in the Brunei context, what we'd like to see, the culture, the football culture is, we have to build it up, from the clubs. We need the clubs to build their identity, We need the clubs to engage with the community where the clubs originate from. And this is, the idea that I convey to you of trying to look at a base so that you can build from the base your fan base. And from there, this cultural element, the culture element, can grow. So if anything else, then the rivalry, the friendly rivalry can grow. And then there will be greater excitement. Nobody in the olden days, nobody in KB wanted to lose to anyone from Bandar Sri Begawan for that matter. So if we can have that sort of, friendly rivalry about a club in Jurudong and a club in Muara, a club in Temburong, a club in Tutong, you know, the friendly rivalry, to the extent that one day maybe, you could emulate, how you feel, like being Liverpool playing against Manchester United for that matter. So, this is the kind of culture that, we also like to develop in Brunei. And from there, surely so many other things, can evolve. If you have that kind of setup, your merchandising can flourish, and all the other services, can benefit. So we hope that, in future years, this kind of football culture uh, can can grow. Thank you.
One of the things that's happening right now, because we're taking Eddie Jones back from England. He was the national coach rugby union over there from England. So England stopped his contract or stopped him being their national coach. So we had a New Zealander who was going to be our national coach for the World Cup. So unfortunately, we said goodbye to him and took Eddie Jones back. Now, what Eddie Jones is doing is our national coach, Mario. So he's actually going out to all of the states where the clubs are, working very closely with the clubs because he wants to see how the players are doing, and he wants that relationship. But he also wants to know from the players, how are you doing? What is your goal? Do you want to play in the World Cup? So he's really gone through that process. So he's also done the same with his assistant coaches. So all the previous assistant coaches back in January, they had a camp. They're all gone, and he's got new coaches coming in, and he's really laying the foundation. And he's setting the bar high. So Australian rugby union is probably ranked 7th or 6th in the world, but he actually says we want to win the World Cup. That's why we're here. So he's got 7 months to do it. He's only got 5 games before the World Cup starts, but he's got but that's his program in place, and he's raised the bar. So in some ways there are similarities here to what we do in Australia, but not everything. But there are similarities. But we also have that rivalry, as PM mentioned. We have a rivalry with New Zealand in rugby. We have a rivalry with England in cricket. We have a rivalry with the USA in basketball. So, sport by sport, we have these different sort of rivalries. And now in Asia, we're playing football in Asia, and we have some new rivalries in Asia. So it makes everyone stronger as well too. So, yeah. But those success factors are very much what the club licensing area. A lot of similarities with the club licensing area that the AFC has brought down, that FABD is working with the clubs on. So, it may seem a little bit foreign, but it's actually really not foreign when you start going through those critical success factors. You can tick off those and keep working, and everything is a work in progress. You don't just say this, I'm finished. It's a work in progress, always.
I understand the guest of honor for the closing ceremony will be arriving at around 4 o'clock. So we'll just take one more question if you have any question. Otherwise, we'll move to the dialogue session. One last question.
While waiting for the last question, let me just pose one question to Rod. You were mentioning just now about sports culture and how the government are ready to put in money into sports in Australia, for that matter. So, where does this cultural element meet between the sports organization and the government? What is the synergy between the two organizations?
Yeah. Actually, sport gets very in Australia. Sport organisers, such as yourselves, can be very tricky with government. Can say, we would like to host Rugby World Cup 2027. We want to host Commonwealth Games 2026, going to host the Olympic Games 2032. But we know that to do that, we're going to have money from government. And we know that we're going to have to renovate some buildings, or we're going to build some new facilities, or put in new tram lines, or bus routes, or train lines, and really sort of work with government and say, look, we want these events, but what does happen is that it brings the whole sporting community together, and you start developing your pathways, and then kids can see these events come, and they say, I want to play football. So the World Cup soccer that's happening this year with women, there will be mothers knocking on doors of football associations after the World Cup saying, I want my daughter to play soccer we call in Australia. How do we play? So the local sporting bodies such as yourselves, so all your clubs need to be ready, because people will become knocking on doors saying that we want to be involved. So that's by having these events, it brings a legacy past the games, a legacy of new systems in place in relation to transport, new facilities in place, but it also means the sport can grow and develop and promote itself, and it does. So that's one of the reasons why sport can be thinking, how do we actually grow? How do we get better? Well, let's try and aim for a world event to bring it here, or an Asian event to bring it here, and that then everyone focus. I see when I come into the national sporting facilities, that beautiful monument at the front there of the 1999 SEA Games. At some stage, I'd like to see another monument of another SEA Games. But you're running out of time, because Thailand is 2025, Malaysia 2027, 2029 is Thailand, and 31 and 33 may be slightly set aside. But when you had the SEA Games here back in 1999, which PM was head of secretariat, or we would say the CEO back in Australia for the SEA Games, there was a big focus on sport, and there were just 20 sports, so you don't have to have the 38, 42 sports that other countries have. You can have just the 20 sports, which Brunei had back in 99, and there's a real big focus, lots of good outcomes coming out of those games at the end of the games, lots of good legacy. But having those events, and Australia's really targeted those events, certainly has helped our sport grow as well.
Any more questions? Otherwise, I think we.
I think they're thirsty. I think they want a coffee break.
I think we will break short the question and answer session, because we have to prepare for the dialogue session afterwards. As I was saying, the guest of honor for the closing ceremony will be arriving around 4 o'clock. So I'll pass over to you, Jenny.
Thank you, Haji Zainal, Rod, and Pangeran. So we're going to go straight into our dialogue session. We've had a slight shift in terms of who will be joining us on stage for the Q&A. So we invite Rod to take his seat and enjoy the remainder of the afternoon. Haji Zainal, will you remain on stage while I invite the panelists to join you? Pangeran, we may not have a chair for you, but I know you'll find a way to get up there. So let's just invite the 4 names I have on my list, and we'll take it from there. So Haji Zainal, I'm going to invite to join you now for an open dialogue discussion. Muhammad Iqbal Fakri Damit. Iqbal, you've been invited to join us on the stage. Muhammad Faisal Haji Lamat, and Haji Halimi, and Muhammad Redzwan Haji Sulaiman. So Haji Zainal, I'll leave it to you to introduce who our panel speakers are and to guide us through our next session.
I think our guests are no strangers to most of you all, but I think it's I'll leave them to introduce themselves very briefly, and then we can just move on to the dialogue session. Yep. Yeah.
Hello. Yeah. Hi, Assalamualaikum, and good afternoon, everyone. See some sleepyheads over here and here there. All right, I'm Iqbal Damit. I'm I came here because I saw the advert in the IG to come, so I'm here as a football enthusiast. Thank you.
Hi, Assalamualaikum and good afternoon. My name is Muhammad Halimi. I am representing Kasuka Football Club.
Assalamualaikum. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Muhammad Faisal Jelamat, the Managing Director of Faksi Bersatu.
Assalamualaikum. Very good afternoon. I'm Muhammad Ridwan bin Najus Rahman from IKLS MB5 FC.
Okay, thank you very much. During this morning and this afternoon session, we've heard several speakers talking on the various aspects of footballing in general, and particularly in Brunei, starting with Wahid Kardawi, who was talking about governance, strategy, and relationships. And then our coach Mario Rivera, basically talking about the culture of sports after evaluating the participations of Brunei at the recent sporting events, footballing events. And then we had Paul talking about the Brunei way, and then the 9 pillars of critical success factors. Now, I think this dialogue section is more or less like designing the way forward, as the title is saying, where do we go from here? And that's where it would be interesting to find out from the practitioners themselves, rather than the so-called those administering football in Brunei. So it would be quite interesting for us to hear from all the four panels here. What would you expect from this particular forum? Why do we go forward from here, based on your experience? Shall I invite There's no particular turn. This is a dialogue, so anybody can just chip in. The dialogue is just sharing ideas and opinions. So be free, be as open as possible.
Sure, will do. Thank you, Mr. Moderator. So I'll take an angle from a supporter point of view. You know, supporter of football who've never been to a FABD, who doesn't know all the system that's in place. Because what supporter needs is just good football and national team winning. As much as because I went to a few of the matches during AMEC myself, I flew there to watch, but hearing from friends and families, they say, oh, you went and you lost. So that is when somehow I realized people don't really care on how the team was set up, what is lacking. They just want result. As much as all of us here want to have good result. So I know, FABD has been doing a lot of great stuff, like what was massive changes for the past few years. I've been involved. I've looked at football for a few years too. So, there's quick fix and there's quick fix and long fix, right? Of course, quick fix, everyone likes it. It's usually fireworks, quick fix, but it would not last for so long. So, yeah. So the way to move forward with all the steps and with all the, I think, experts who's been around this FABD has done a lot of good changes. I know I'm not, and also the last point that I wanna raise up to the floor is also on top of just now Paul said about players' ego. There's a lot of words like experts and seniors who's been around for a few years saying all this bad and bad mouthing the association. It's just that I always believe in, if you're not part of the solution, you're always part of the problem. So that is important. Where if this goes out to the to the public out there, if you really want to help out in the development of football, at least raise up your voice, talk to the right people, and also FABD has to have the right platform for public to actually voice out their constructive opinion, constructive suggestion. Thank you.
I think the concept of where do we go from here, right? It's a big question mark to not only particular one person, it's the football level in Brunei, right? Success that doesn't happen in one day. It happens progressively. There is a strategic planning. So where do we go from here? What's next? So do we have any strategic planning in the sense of what's the planning in 5 years planning or 10 years planning? So what is our set of goal in football, basically? So it's particularly in FABD, right? So we talk about national team. So what do we focus on? So the quick fix is national team. That's what we see now. But the long fix is the grassroots. That's what we see. So that's why we said, what is the goal of FABD? Are we targeting a MEC final in 10 years' time? Are we targeting AFC or Asian Cup in 15 years' time? So do we have that set of goals? So from there, if we have set the goals, so easy for us, there is a checklist. So how do we achieve that targets, right? So if you do not have a goal and targets, so what do we want to achieve? That's, for me, that's important, right? So if you have a good, talented set of coaches or whoever, lovers of football, they can share ideas. But again, it's just ideas. How do we action the ideas? So that's the most important thing. Everybody can say 1,000 or 1 million wonders, but importantly, what the action? Who do the action? And how do we achieve that? That's important.
Okay, there are two things here. One, at the grassroots level, what do you expect from FABD, and at the same time, what role could you play in helping develop football in Brunei? This is for everybody. Yeah,
I think now we have the new TD. I think he have done something great. The development about the grassroots, there is ongoing things. But previously, when the era of we playing football, that was 15, 20 years ago. We are talking about football when we are in primary school. So this school is again that school. So you see the trend of football is there. We are talking about playing national team. We don't care about how much we are paid. We don't care about money at that time. We just love football only. But now the era is different. Everything is money. No money, no honey.
Yep.
So even the problem that we have currently, right? Oh, I don't have transport, or I don't have this.
Yep.
That's a big problem. Even I myself, I want to be a footballer. I walk from distance of, I was staying in the police headquarters and going for training in Manglight football field. I walk from that distance because I'm passionate on football. My target is to play national team. But that was 15, 20 years ago. This is different. So, I mean, in terms of the mentality of the youngster now, right? So, like I said, there's no money, no money, no honey. That's from my point of view.
Alhamdulillah. Actually, I agree with Tuan Iqbal and Tuan Hilmi today. It's regarding the development. Our grassroots, our youth are the assets of this football. This forum is actually an eye opener, especially for small clubs like us. We are actually a newcomer in the league, in the Super League. but we've been around since 1960s. But this is actually an achievement for us, coming from a community football club. What we wanted to see in the future after this, more involvement, especially from the government, to support our association, and the clubs as well. As our Deputy Secretary General is saying just now, there has to be a passion, and you have to be ambitious, and at the same time, it has to be realistic. So the youth are our assets. We need to develop the youth or the younger generations for the future. Today's generation, the players in today's generations will be over in a few years' time. But in 10 years' time, if we, as Tuan tadi said, we need to have a target. If you want to compete in the World Cup, 10 or 20 years, we need to start now, right? So start with the grassroots. So hopefully, after this forum, we'll be able to sit down again, berdialog bersama klub-klub members yang ada untuk membicarakan mengenai dengan apa langkah-langkah ataupun the plans, strategic plans yang harus diimplement untuk kebaikan for the future of our football industry. InsyaAllah, mudah-mudahan apa yang dirancangkan pada hari ini dan di masa akan datang akan tercapai dengan with the support from the AFC dan juga our football association FABD, insyaallah. Terima kasih.
I'm agree with Tuan Faisal said just now by government support is very important to our association FABD. The most important thing is also from FABD because from my perspective, we want to like Brunei, the modern football. But can achieve it? It's not easy because the government support it is very sensitive issue because finance assistance with the government, I think nothing. That's all.
Yeah, I think it's the viability of small clubs, especially now since you're saying that people are no longer motivated by becoming a Brunei football player, but more on the income or the money that they will be receiving for playing football in Brunei. That would be a challenge towards clubs in Brunei in developing players, because I don't know whether you've got all the resources or you'll be totally dependent on support. You've been talking about support from the government. Is it financial support specifically?
Yes.
Yeah, previously people feel proud, proud in playing for
yes,
Brunei.
Basically, the fundamental is the financial support and the infrastructure. So both has to be come along, then only we can progress and achieve our future, target. Maybe Tuan Jeremy has something to say on the.
Excuse me. Assalamualaikum. Just untuk menambah sedikit pasal soalan Tuan Haji mengenai dengan grassroots, kan. So our focus now is on grassroots right now for the next 10 to 12 years. But then how many grassroots or academy in Brunei itself yang register under FABD? That's we want to know. Then my suggestion should be in one district should be have one grassroots or one academy to be registered under FABD. It should be nice to be have one grassroots or one academy under each district. That's my suggestion. But right now, I don't know whether it's happened or not. Hopefully, somebody can answer from FABD itself. Thank you very much.
It's a question directed at FABD. One district, one academy.
Yeah, it should be
Yeah.
happen. Because it's more easier to have one grassroots academy or academy in one district, because with a lot of exco here and without a lot of coaches here, so I can be assigned someone to be run the grassroots academy.
Thank you for that very interesting question. Definitely, we have to expand our activities. We just couldn't put all our eggs in one basket. It is our desire, to develop and expand, and it is our desire to have different areas of football excellence as possible. So your suggestion that every district should have, a grassroots center, yes, that is a very good question. And inshallah, we will do it. But then again, you see, we have to start somewhere whereby, it can be made the role model, because people will look at, a success story.
Yeah.
If it is successful in Brunei Mara, then maybe Temurong will be interested, Tutong will be interested, Blight will be interested. And then from there, what do we do? From the grassroots centers, we have then to develop an academy ourselves, where the best, the cream de la cream can be put together, and then it will be in our national academy. I mean, that is the long-term plan. But as of now, to answer your question in short, yes, we will have different grassroots centers. Thank you.
Talking about long-term planning, I'll be asking the Delhi panel here. What about the standard of refereeing? Yeah. Okay.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Kalau saya sebagai exco sekarang ini di FABD, cuma pandangan pribadi saya, untuk pasukan kebangsaan sekarang ini mungkin tidak masalah. Sebabnya kita ini sudah mempunyai jurulatih profesional, dan kelengkapan yang mencukupi. Tidak ada masalah. Yang masalahnya sekarang ini, yang jadi pengamatan saya lah, pemilihan pemain itu tidak betul. Macam mana pun perjalanan kita ini, rancangan kita ini, kalau pemain itu dalam squad itu tidak lurus, kemana tadi kan membawa pasukan itu. Jadi untuk memilih pemain benar-benar sebagai pemain kebangsaan, kita ini mesti benar-benar orang meneliti kemampuan pemain itu. Itu yang pengamatan saya lah. Dan yang kedua, pendedahan mesti banyak. Pendedahan pasukan itu mesti banyak. Daripada statistik yang kita lihat tadi, di mana Thailand, Indonesia, perlawanan persahabatannya sampai ke 190 lebih, 70 lebih pun ada. Dengan kita ini hanya 20 lebih ke 30 lebih perlawanan. Jadi pendedahan atau kurang. Kalau pendedahan kita ini mencukupi, insyaAllah mungkin kita ini tidak makan masa lama untuk menaikkan taraf pasukan kebangsaan. Terima kasih.
Okay. I was just indicated that we only have about 5 more minutes here. Very, very quickly, I just to ask about the standard of refereeing in Brunei, and maybe whether VR should be here as well.
I think with regards to refereeing standard, I think we have not much FIFA referee here, probably. I think we are talking about few only, right? So in terms of number of hours refereeing as well, I think we are lack of high matches, good matches because of our league structure lah. That's also one of the issue. Also, I've been hearing as well that if we wanted to play friendly match, contoh, right? Certain referee no more merefereekan. Correct me if I'm wrong this. Certain referee-nya atau tim maninya anunya suka membantah, suka berkelahi tim maninya. So, but by fact that if they become a referee to a high intensity match, right? Contoh, it will be good for them, their development. But if they are thinking of that in their mindset, then how do they grow? Kan? The problem also, if we give a comment to the referee how the refereeing standard, and then they give not good feedback to the team. So how do we want to improve from here as a referee? You are a referee, of course, we abide by the rules of referee, the rules of game as well, right? But if the referee standard, we can have a good football standard, good quality players, but good league structure. But the referee standard is low. I think this is also highlighted by JDT as well, TMJ. In Malaysia, you can have a good high professional football leagues, but the standard of referee has also need to be good as well. This is also important. I mean, this is from what I've observed and my feedback. I'm not sure the rest, since the topics is about a referee. I mean, here we are not criticizing the referee, but again, this is a seminar, right? I mean, this is a forum. So for us to open discussion. So what needs to be highlighted, and what's the way forward to improve football in Brunei?
We got to be honest.
I think to like said is
Okay, so in behalf of the referees, during the off season, the referees have been having workshops. Recently, I think it was 1 month, 2 months ago, we had a referee instructor come from Malaysia. So we actually had constructive criticism between each other about how we can be better, because we talked about the level of the referee before in the FA Cup we reviewed, and also we reviewed previously on the futsal. So normally after every game I go in and speak to the refs, because what's important is we must protect the refs. We support the refs, and now they're looking at game situations and how they can improve. They know we had a discussion how we can be better. We're talking about basic principles of football, but also we're actually showing them some situations on VAR. I understand right now in Brunei we don't have VAR, but we're trying to give them updated information on situations that we don't have VAR here, but how can they make quicker and better decisions. I understand in referees it's a problem. Indonesia, everywhere, it's a joke. But we're here to improve the refs, and the great thing is they're doing workshops. Maybe that people don't know about this, but there is regularly workshops with the referees, which obviously it seems that we haven't really publicly showed that. It's more a little bit in-house. But you can say they're trying, but there is workshops on this, and they regularly come. I think last time it was 36 referees from Brunei came. On a side note with the refs, we're trying to improve the refs, bring new refs in. I've spoken to MOE also about students who are around 20 to 22. We're trying to say if they don't want to be footballers, is it possible to be referees? Things like this. So that's in discussions on how to bring a new generation of referees also. But I agree with you, it's not many people like referees. I never did.
How many FIFA certified referee do we have currently?
It's low, but that's what I'm saying. We have the instructor from Malaysia to come in and educate them, so they can.
I'm saying that can we increase the number of certified FIFA referees, the locals? I think probably to promote them. Right.
100%. We're trying to do that, but we're also trying to increase the referees from grassroots and youth, because what I've noticed when I arrived, I see the same referee in grassroots, and then I see him in the senior. So we need to increase it.
Yeah, that's what we see as well. The
Yeah.
referees who's going for the FC championship. There's only few referees, 2-3 referees always going here and there. So
Yeah.
where is the rest of the referees?
But that's the thing. We're talking about the players. How do we get new players? How do we improve the players? The players are in the schools. So we're trying to say maybe ex-players to be a ref, which is difficult, but also talking to the teachers, which they don't have much time, but maybe the older students, we suggested that cannot play football or maybe are not so good. They love football, so maybe that's the next situation. Maybe they can be a referee because they're involved.
I think because of the payment of the referees is very low.
This also, but there's, like we talked about, there's many obstacles. We know this, but it's more like we talked about the love and the passion of the game. But this is in process. But referees, we very rarely discuss, and like even myself with the Brunei way, I didn't speak more in detail about referees, but they are doing workshops. We have FIFA referee instructors from Malaysia coming here to educate, because we need to help them as well.
I
Because
think as
I'm
well-
not expecting Brunei referees to know everything. I'm not expecting them to be high level educated. I'm not expecting that when I arrive. But the main thing we're trying to say is how can we help them at the end of the day? Because I know it's difficult, and we haven't been referees. The abuse you get and how the money payment, there's many minus, but we need to find a way to increase. We need to increase the referees, and then obviously then the education comes into it.
Yeah, now we are coming to the league, right? So the league is starting this week. So I was surprised that I was trying to say that could we have a workshop with the referees? Maybe there is a new law of the game. What's happening in 2022?
Already in process. Already 2-3 months ago. It's been happening.
I mean between the clubs, coaches, and the referees, a one workshop. Yes, we talk about what's the new rules set by FIFA coming up to the. Sometimes when we play the league, suddenly they come out with these rules, which we are not aware of, right?
Okay, I have to cut short the discussion because that's all the time we have for the dialogue. I wish we could continue further because there are a lot of other issues perhaps you would like to raise. Let me thank Muhammad Iqbal, Muhammad Faisal, Haji Halimi, and Muhammad Rezwan for your participation in this dialogue. Thank you very much. I hand over to Jenny.
So we're now awaiting the arrival of our guest of honor for our closing ceremony. We have a tiny window. Mr. Vahid, we want to have a group photograph with yourself and the speakers before you leave for your flight to KL. So Pengiran, who would you want to have in the group photograph? We'll have Vahid and Paul and Mario and Rod. Okay.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much. All the best. So you're going to change. Thank you, man. Cheers. Thank you.
Goodbye to AFC. Have a safe flight. So we're now waiting our guest of honor who will be joining us from the ministry. The rest of the program should be very quick. We'll have the guest of honor's arrival, followed by some closing remarks. There'll be the presentation of the resolutions. We'll do a quick presentation of souvenirs, as we'll close out with a doa before we all break for refreshments. So we're looking at about another half an hour of a program, and then we can enjoy more networking and more refreshments once our guest of honor arrives. pleasure to welcome our guest of honor, Yang Mulia Awang Haji Muhammad Rosfazila bin Haji Yusli, our Deputy Director of the Youth and Sports Department. Our guest of honor, ladies and gentlemen, this is our closing ceremony after a very fruitful and interesting football forum brought to you by FABD. Thank you all so much for being with us all the way to the end. There have been people here from 8 a.m. talking, engaging, discussing. It's been exciting. So with that, ladies and gentlemen, to deliver more exciting remarks, can I call upon the president of the association, Muhammad Tusin, to deliver the closing remarks?
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. And very good afternoon. Yang Mulia Awang Haji Rosfadila bin Haji Yusli, Timbalan Pengarah Jabatan Belia dan Sukan, Kementerian Kebudayaan Belia dan Sukan, ahli-ahli Exco, ahli-ahli jawatan kuasa penganjur, ahli-ahli sekretariat, ahli-ahli media, hadirin hadirat yang dihormati sekalian. For me, he said that good things has to come to an end. Personally, I've had a very enjoyable afternoon and morning. Untuk maklumat Yang Mulia Tuan Haji, we had a very fruitful discussion arising from the forum this morning and this afternoon. A lot of matters had been discussed with a view towards finding ways of how or where do we go from here. A lot of discussions, a lot of presentations, a lot of exchanges of ideas had taken place. But the aim is to make Brunei football better. And I'm very, very grateful that we had a team of rapporteurs led by volunteers and staff from FABD who had been working very diligently the whole morning and the whole afternoon with the aim of producing a resolution which I will read very soon and which we seek your kind consideration and kindness to deliver to Honorable Minister of Sports for further considerations from your ministry and from His Majesty's government. So without further ado, I'd just like to convey to you the resolutions arising from today's forum. And we hope that everyone in this room can share and can hope for better times to come. If I may. Summary of resolutions. We can briefly summarize that from today's forum, there were several key findings. We can summarize those findings into several pillars of actions: that of the government, FABD, DAFC, and the community. From the government, we can summarize that the Football Association of Brunei Darussalam, FABD, believe that government support is of crucial importance in putting Brunei footballing ambition in the right track. The support from the government is as envisioned by His Majesty's Tita, that sports contributes in instilling discipline in management, as it will be the catalyst for excellence of sports and pride of the country. FABD took note that the government is the key stakeholder, and for that reason, FABD desires financial support for the provision of vital infrastructure to support the development of football in Brunei Darussalam. Support is also desirable in capability and capacity building programs. The FABD seeks supports in continued professional education and development. Hence, collaboration from the government, such as the Ministry of Education, the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports, is vital so that young talents are supported financially and in other ways as necessary in their further development as footballers. Research has shown that improvements in the sports sciences, sports medicine, conditioning, physiology, and psychology correlate with the progress of football as a sport and industry, and also the betterment of players. However, this area is currently lacking in Brunei. This can be bolstered through coordinated efforts between FABD, the Ministry of Health, and the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports. From the FABD, we can summarize that the coaches need to make sure the players have enough training and sufficient time for preparation so the players will be well prepared in terms of fitness and technique level. Coaches must move on from tactical approaches of the past in favor of new training methods, such as placing the players realistic game practices to improve their self-solving skills and prepare them for unexpected deviations in real tournaments. Training structures should be amended to improve the performance of the football team. It is essential to coach players not only to have playing skills, but also to embed passion, confidence, and competitiveness in themselves for every game. Selection of national team players must be transparent and comprehensive. It would be beneficial for the FABD to explore the idea of revenue streaming by way of merchandising and other commercial services that may benefit the organizations and clubs alike. From the AFC, we can summarize that implementation of initiatives for developing football must be feasible and executable as per the requirement of AFC. The FABD welcome AFC continuous financial support and programs and other initiatives for football development in Brunei Darussalam. From the community, we can summarize that recognition of the golden generation of footballers current under 13s is crucial. It is important to put in place pathways which allow for the identification of this golden generation, i.e., promising local footballers from a young age and the subsequent development of their talents so that football excellence may be achieved at the national level. Intensive grassroots development programs are therefore needed for these young talents to be nurtured accordingly. It is imperative that sports culture and the spirits of competitiveness be fostered in the local community to engage the youth passion in football so as to assure and ensure long-term sustainability. Involvement and support from parents are necessary to encourage young talents in their pursuit of a possible career in professional football. Coach education by way of training, certification, and workshops must be implemented and made mandatory for all coaches to ensure that the quality of the game and players are up to par with international standards. The FABD took note of the community involvement of football development in the country. Therefore, FABD is committed in providing the necessary training, programs, and courses in realizing the National Vision 2035. The FABD realizes there's a lot of challenge to achieve the desired level of progress. FABD took note that the equal commitment from stakeholders is essential. This means bolstering interest and meaningfully investing in football to promote the growth and continued progress of the game in Brunei Darussalam. Yang Mulia, Timbalan Pengarah, that's the final report of the resolutions which contain all the details of today's forum. Thank you to everyone who participated, and we hope that from today's forum, we know where do we go from here. So that is the resolution, and we will be submitting this resolution to Yang Mulia Tuan Timbalan Pengarah for onward transmittal to Yang Berhormat Menteri Kebudayaan, Belia dan Sukan. And we hope that through his good office, His Majesty's government will take a lot of time to look into what we aspire and what football can be in the future. So I would just like once again to thank everybody here. Thank you, Tuan Haji, for gracing this occasion. And thank you to all who have made this forum possible. Thank you, Jenny, for sitting there very diligently. And I'm sure that, you have been a lot wiser football-wise. Jadi, apakah harapan Ketani selepas forum ini? Setentunya Ketani ingin menghadapi masa depan bola sepak, masa depan yang cerah. Saya yakin jika Ketani bekerja sama berganding bahu dan sentiasa terbuka, bertukar-tukar fikiran, bertukar minda, I'm sure nothing is impossible. But you may realize, and we must realize, that today's forum is only the beginning. There is a lot more hard work to come. And what FABD needs is your utmost cooperation. Without your cooperation, we can't go far. But if we work together, we can walk far and we can reach our destination. So, I thank you very much and may Allah bless you. Moga-moga usaha kita ni ke arah pembangunan bola sepak demi negara akan diberkati oleh Allah Subhanahu wa taala juga. Wabillahi taufik wal hidayah. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. So, Pengiran, while you're up there, shall we take this opportunity now to present the resolutions to our Deputy Director? Yang Mulia Awang Haji Muhammad Rosfazila is here to receive on behalf of the Ministry of Culture, Youth and Sports. Ladies and gentlemen, the presentation of the resolutions. And we also have a token of appreciation for our guest of honor for joining us. One more photograph with the official camera. Hazim's got the official camera. Tuan Haji Rosfazila, thank you for joining us. We do have a token of appreciation, Pengiran, to present our guest of honor. Thank you, Tuan Haji, for joining us. And Pengiran, we also have a token of our appreciation for Mr. Rod for joining us for his presentation as well. So Rod, thank you very much for your words today and your time. We have a token of appreciation for Rod. So ladies and gentlemen, again, our thanks to our speakers today and to everybody who engaged so actively, to all of our friends and your fans on social media. The whole event today was streamed live on YouTube, so there's a record of some very exciting discussions that took place today. Pengiran Haji Matusin, thank you so much. Congratulations on a successful event with your exco. And we'd like to now invite Haji Adi Suhardi bin Haji Mohidin to read the closing dua for today's ceremony.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal as innal insana lafi khusr illal ladzina amanu wa amilus solihat wa tawassaw bil haqqi wa tawassaw bis sabr. Sadaqallahul azim.
Thank you, Haji Adi. Ladies and gentlemen, we do have refreshments, but we'd love to have a group photograph with everybody before we enjoy our break. So we'll have that on the stage, shall we, Pengiran? At the stage? Okay. So we'll have our guest of honor with our exco and our speakers, and maybe everybody would be lovely. So this is everybody Pengiran. All right. Let's coordinate with Hazim, your official photographer. So this is everybody going to be on one level, or there's a second level as well? Okay, second level. I'm quality control. Thank you all so much. Thank you, Tuan Haji, for joining us. Ladies and gentlemen, let's go and have refreshments and continue our conversation. Thank you all.